Yeah.
Sometimes when it starts the recording, it knocks the camera off, so Ian will have to leave and re-enter. Just turn his own camera back on.
Ian, can you hear us?
Is he muted? He's unmuted.
Can you hear me now, Gareth?
We can hear you. We can't see you, Ian.
Can't see me.
No.
Oh, hang on. Somebody put my camera off.
There.
Okay now?
Okay, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Prynawn da poib, and welcome to this November's meeting of the Social Services Scrutiny Committee. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm very honoured to have been selected as chair of this committee. I've been a member of this committee since I was elected in 2017, and social services has always been very close to my heart. So welcome, everyone. If we can now move along to the agenda, and firstly, any apologies for absence? Okay. If we can move on then to item 2, any declarations of interest, including whip-in declarations.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Chair. I've got a declaration of interest. I currently work in the private sector of children's residential.
Okay. Thank you. To item number 3, that's the not-for-profit report. I think Councillor Louise Maynard-Vokes, Cabinet Member for Social Services, will do the introductions, and then officers will follow on from that.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the not-for-profit Children's Services summary of the report. This report provides members with an update on the elimination of profit agenda and the impact it will have on Merthyr Tydfil Children's Services. Report 2.1, that the Scrutiny Committee discusses and comments on the issues set out in the report, and 2.2, that the Scrutiny Committee identifies any further information they would like to receive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard-Vokes. Would Joanne Llewellyn like to add and take us through the report, please?
Yes, of course. So obviously the elimination of profit agenda, I think we've spoken about it numerous times in different meetings. This is a Welsh Government programme about eliminating profit from the care of children within residential care and private fostering. So with this, the children in care, we want them to remain close to home, so they continue to be part of the community, so that's within Merthyr Tydfil, and for their stay to be as short as possible. So obviously our work will continue to try and return children to their families as much as possible, because we're committed to keeping families together. So the programme for government has a commitment to eliminating private profit from the care of looked after children, and they want to do that in the next Senate term. There have been discussions whether that's, because the bill's going through the second phase at the moment, whether that will be extended or not. I don't have any clarification on any of the dates at the moment, whether there will be any extensions. To date, we've been told there will be no new private for-profit registered with the Care Inspectorate Wales, and that by 2027, by the April 2027, Merthyr Tydfil will have to have returned our children in for-profit placements back to Merthyr Tydfil or into not-for-profits. That may be extended. We're unsure at the moment. I met with Welsh Government in October, and there's still those discussions going forward, so we won't know anything for definite until the bill's been passed. So eliminating profit from care is about transitioning to a not-for-profit model in Wales, and the focus is about values and not on finances. This is from Welsh Government, and this is their rhetoric. So the aim for them is that public money is invested in accommodation for care experienced children, and it's not extracted for profit, so it's reinvested into those families. So we're currently in a period of considerable uncertainty, because as I mentioned, we're not very clear on the dates as yet of when when it's going to be finalised, when we're going to know exactly which young people may have to return or may not have to return. So at this moment we're still in that period of where we're trying to work through returning children where it's suitable for them to come back, and again the work massively about keeping children within their families, and that is going to be our agenda. So once the guidance has been developed, we will continue to review our position. We have our placement commissioning strategy, which went through council recently, so again that will be part of our elimination of profit agenda, will be to consider that, to consider our needs, our placement sufficiency duties, and to monitor and to review that through the elimination of profit, and when that changes we'll continue to change the work that we do. So Programme for Government is a commitment to deliver this vision for children's social care. It's about changing how we provide these services, looking into recruiting additional foster carers, developing our own in-house residential services, which, as you know, that's what we've tried to do and continue to do within Merthyr Tydfil. So issues, generally there's widespread support for the central principle of the proposal through both public and third sector bodies, but there's been concerns around timelines and the transition period. Concerns that that's not been long enough, which is why we're unclear at this moment in time, because it may be extended, because that's what a number of different sectors and bodies have been saying to Welsh Government. And we're concerned that if that's not managed appropriately, there may be some cross-border issues. If we're not able to commission for profit in, say, for England, so that might have some issues with our young people who've placed in England, have been there for a long period of time, and it may not be in their best interests to come back. But again, we're still unclear at this moment in time what will be definitely within the bill. There's some uncertainty with leading providers. They may exit the market, and we may lose placements for our young people, or they may provide only cross-border placement, so into England placements. There's potential to destabilise those placements for our children who have got in care at the moment. I've not been given concerns haven't been raised to me by providers for our children at this moment in time. I think there's still that waiting game whilst the bill is there. So again, unfortunately, I don't have any answers for that. We're in that waiting arena at the moment, I think. Obviously, there could be risk of legal challenge for us. It could be if children may not wish to be returned, and we're having those expectations to return them. There's potential from those who are within the for-profit sector at the moment within Welsh Government. So there's lots of legal debates and concerns going on at the moment. As you know, we have issues with our social care workforce and recruitment and retention of staff across Wales and across the whole of the UK, really. And of course, those are concerns that will continue to be an issue and could cause more issues if people don't want to go into a sector that's got so much instability. Again, there could be that anxiety with those in for-profit providers. They may decide to leave, and we may lose foster carers who are with for-profit fostering agencies. Sorry, I'm losing my voice as well at the same time. Sorry. So again, we're concerned about the sufficiency and suitability of those foster placements and residential placements going forward. There are concerns that if there aren't enough provision, how are you going to manage that going forward? Which is why, again, you hear me talking a lot about recruiting foster carers and developing our own provision to make sure we have got that placement sufficiency. Again, that concern of unplanned ending. So if providers leave the sector, what's going to happen to those young people? So it's making sure that with our placement commissioning strategies, we keep on top of those, reviewing what's happening with our young people and what young people are in those provisions. And as soon as we know anything, it's about making sure that we're working quite actively to support those young people. There's some concerns about the lack of clear information that may lead providers to feeling they've got no incentive to remain on the frameworks that we have already, because we have tried and make sure there's lots of standardised contracts and terms and conditions. And it may be that I'm saying maybe because we're not clear at the moment, so sorry, it sounds a lot of uncertainties, but I suppose it's just raising those concerns. We're not quite sure how it'll have an impact. Some of the impacts concerns about the Welsh language, because we might have to make more placements outside of Wales if those providers aren't in Wales and they'll only provide placements across the border, although we're not meant to be doing that under the bill. We're supposed to only place young people in Wales, Welsh young people in Wales. But again, if we, the importance will be providing accommodation for those young people and the right accommodation. One of the concerns is that consideration's been about this agenda is that numbers of children within care will reduce, and that's not been seen across Wales as it's not consistent across Wales. There's been a reduction because you can only really transfer these young people back into local authorities if the numbers of children reduce and the amount of support required is needed, so which is why our preventative services are going to be so crucial, because we need to have manageable levels of children within the care system. There's also some expectations that the not-for-profit and third sector will expand. In conversations with some of the not-for-profits, they are concerned about overwhelming themselves, and they don't want to expand too quickly. So that's also quite a challenge, because they want to make sure they're doing it correctly so they can expand and take over within perhaps the short time frames, is some of the conversations we've been having. So the bill, the Health and Social Care Wales Bill, so it was introduced in May of this year. We're expecting it to proceed to stage 2 in the 13th of December 2024, if the elements are agreed by the Senedd. And the bill has confirmed Welsh Government's commitment to eliminating profit from the care of looked after children. So we shall wait and see what comes from in December. So unfortunately this has come a little bit early perhaps, because I'll perhaps have more information post-December. But this is what we've got at the moment. So where we were, so prior to 2023, we had no in-house children's residential provision. One provision became registered with Care Inspector at Wales this year. We've got another one which is imminent within the next fortnight, I'd like to hope. We should hear from COW, Care Inspector at Wales, about having our second registered. We had, in 2023, we had 18 children in external residential provision. That has decreased slightly to about 14, 15 young people, but again that fluctuates depending on our young people and how they come into care and what their needs are. We have decreased the use of external private fostering provision, but only slightly, so numbers are starting to decrease but very slowly. But unfortunately some of that has been because these young people have been in residential care rather than foster care. But good news that we have returned 3 children to in-house residential provision, so that's really positive for these young people, and one has actually had a really positive move on to other accommodations, so that's really, really positive news. We've got approximately 38 children in the independent fostering agencies. Our looked after population is around the 180s. I think it's probably 184. It goes up within the 180s. We are some concerns, and I raised with Welsh Government officials that if no exemptions are made, we will need to provide some of our placements for especially those children in for-profit fostering is a real concern for me, and I have raised that is a concern, and we need to have some way of working through with those young people. If they've been in those placements for a long period of time, I certainly don't think it's in their best interest to move them to unregistered, unregulated accommodation. Because of the bill, it's about looking at those individual children's needs, and that's certainly what we'll be doing and fighting for our young people. So we have around about 14-ish young people in out-of-authority residential placements. So about 8% of our population is in out-of-authority residential placements. Again, that can go up and down. In the next fortnight, I could have 2 going in there, or a young person may leave for other reasons. So just to be aware that fluctuates. So planning for that can be quite challenging, quite tricky as us, but that's why we have our placement commissioning strategy, and that's why we've got to be quite flexible in the way that we work. Developing the flowers accommodation will hopefully help us to make sure that we don't place future children out of authority once that's developed and hopefully registered sometime next year. What we will say is developing even a single regulated care is really time consuming for us as a department and for the local authority, and it's costly. It's not it's costly to provide residential care for any young people. So it is difficult and challenging. So it's about doing that in a way that we can manage within our own timeframes and not overexerting ourselves to provide too much all at once. I'm going to touch wood on this one and say we've got no operating without regulations. So what we call those illegal placements at this moment in time in Merthyr, so I'm really pleased about that. So hopefully long may that continue, because those are basically placements that aren't regulated and not inspected by CIW. We do inform CIW of that and they help us to monitor them, but they're not what we want as a local authority, which is why we're developing the flowers accommodation to make sure we don't have that going forward. One of the issues we've got is there's a really finite number of citizens who are able and willing to provide foster care for our children within Merthyr Tydfil. And that's a gap of about 35 placements we have at this moment in time. We continue to advertise. We have a recruitment strategy that's developed by Foster Wales. We're continuing, I suspect you see lots that is going on within fostering, trying to recruit additional foster carers. But at this moment in time, there are not enough foster carers to meet the needs of our children within Merthyr Tydfil, which is really unfortunate. What we're doing as well is continuing to promote the use of special guardianship orders for these young people. That helps us to reduce the number of children in care, but also it's about providing a robust support package for those young people and the carers in line with what we provide to kinship foster carers. So there's been some concerns about whether the Eliminate grant funding will continue in the 25-26 years. Again, when I met with Welsh Government, I really requested that that money continues to help us to staff our residential homes, to help us develop new residential homes, to develop services that prevent placement breakdowns, prevent children going into care. So I was hoping that I'd have heard by this meeting whether we would have had that money, but I still have not. I've gone through my emails since being on leave and we've not heard anything as yet. New year now. So yeah, so again, on that basis, I can't provide any update on financially supporting this either. What I can say is moving to a full not-for-profit system of care is going to be a significant challenge for us, mainly, I believe, in terms of foster carers within Merthyr Tydfil. And I raised to Welsh Government, I think that will be our most significant issue for us, and to provide that support within Merthyr Tydfil, with the numbers of children in care at this moment in time. You know, pleasingly, our numbers of children in care has decreased from quite a high number in April of this year. Lots of support going into preventions, lots of support to try and reunify families. We've had children who have been on care orders, perhaps with kinship carers or general carers. We've really promoted to get special guardianship orders by providing a greater level of service. So I'm hoping that we can continue to keep our numbers at a reduced rate through doing actions like that. It's a continual process for us in children's services to see how we can support our families. So again, I've spoken about the flowers or development of Thomastown House. So we're hoping that the short breaks element of that will help to prevent children with autism, ADHD and those sort of disabilities from placement breakdowns with family members by providing a short break service. We're hoping that then will provide that additional extra support for those families and help also those young people and help them to develop some additional skills once they spend their time with us. There's continual work around Foster Wales and the adverts and the local campaigns. We're doing a lot of work focused on the wellbeing support to retain our carers and prevent placement breakdowns. We've had a worker providing therapeutic support to them. We've got our behaviour clinic who's working regionally to provide support to both carers and young people to help stabilise placements, and positively we seem to have had a reduction in the number of placement breakdowns anecdotally and from what I can see, so that's really good news as far as stabilising our young people. Where do we want to be? So we want to develop our provision, increase placement sufficiency. We are concerned we might not be able to meet the identified aims within the Health and Social Care Bill in the current timescales, but I have raised that with Welsh Government officials, and we're certainly not the only local authority to be saying that. In fact, significant numbers of us are. We need to recruit high numbers of foster carers at a faster pace than we're doing currently. I'm not sure how we do that because our recruitment is so, we're out there so much in order to do that. That's a real challenge. And I think all local authorities are in the same position. It's not just us uniquely. We're all in this difficult, challenging position. What I want to have is all our children's homes registered with CIW, to have no operating without regulations, and to have make sure all of our placements are regulated. To have returns, and I'm putting here if suitable, because I think for some young people it may not be suitable, and those young people we need to really consider about what their needs are. Those children who are in external residential provision to in-house or not-for-profit provision. It's about having foster placement sufficiency, to increase the number of special guardianship orders, to reduce the number of kinship foster carers. And that's not a negative about kinship foster carers, but it's about providing a different way to provide that support to our young people, so they don't have the being in care label, which can be seen quite as negative and onerous for them. And again, it's about supporting any general foster carers, whether external agencies, to come and become Merthyr Tydfil foster carers or to become SGO carers, because that would really help us in terms of our placement sufficiency. We also need to consider placement sufficiency for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, those with complex needs and additional needs. Again, that's within our placement commissioning strategy, so I won't go into that there, but that's part of that piece of work that we've been doing and discussed in council. It's about providing robust support to children in care, preventing children entering the care system. So again, that's the prevention work, Early Help Hub and our intake team, and the work of our supporting change team. Is really important that we work hard to reduce the number of children who are coming perhaps on the child protection register, who the children becoming looked after. We're also looking at working regionally to look at any specialist provision to help us to meet the elimination of profit agenda. So perhaps where we don't have high levels of need, so perhaps within children with disabilities or children with really high level behavioural needs that we wouldn't be able to meet within Merthyr Tydfil, to whether we can meet that as a region. And we're also going to be looking at our step down provision for those who are 16 plus. We've really started to work with housing, really positive meeting with housing, to look into how we can support those young people to move into accommodation when they're 18 within the local area, to make sure we have really clear pathways. So lots of work is going on with that. So yeah, we're going to continue our registration process for our homes. We're going to continue to review our management structures within the residential and 16 plus accommodation, because it's really important, as I said previously, that we get that right. There's no point in us developing properties and homes that we cannot manage effectively, because that will set our young people up to fail, and it certainly won't help us to retain staff. It's what I've spoken to before about our placement commissioning strategy, recruiting foster carers, looking into our special guardianship support, and we're certainly increasing the level of support we provide to our carers, growing our relationships with not-for-profit providers. I do link in with those to look into see what we can do differently, linking again, like I said, with housing or RSLs, to see what we can provide accommodation for young people to move on to appropriately. Continue the work with Foster Wales and looking at our targeted marketing plans. How do we support carers who may wish to transition to us from the for-profit providers? How do we work to that part of the transfer protocol? So all this work is ongoing behind the scenes with Foster Wales. There may be at some stage conversations with for-profit residential provision who may wish to come across to us. We've not had any in Merthyr Tydfil at this moment in time who've had that, but again, we're aware that that may have to happen. We may have conversations about how we perhaps could afford that, whether that would be in our best interests, and how we could do that. We're not like that yet, but we're aware that these things may happen. And again, we're going to have to be aware of the contingency plan. My screen's gone blank, I don't know. Oh, they're still there. That's fine. And it's about, sorry, I didn't want to make sure that you didn't miss me. Developing a contingency plan in case we have any providers who perhaps give notice and ends and we have children within placements. So we're going to have to consider how we're going to develop that and support them going forward as well. And again, as I already advised the Welsh Government officials, we cannot fund this on a current functional financial provision and through reserves, and that actually those things like the elimination of profit grant are really important for us as a local authority to take this forward and continue the practice that we're doing. Sorry, that was long.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm sure members will have a number of questions. This is a lot of food for thought within that report. So first of all, we'll deal with any questions that members may have of officers or the cabinet member, please. Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Joanne, I've got 4 or 5 questions, all sort of interrelated. Do you want me to list them, or do you want to answer them one by one?
Do one at a time, so then I won't forget anything.
Okay. Why does the authority use private providers?
Because we don't have enough provision internally at the moment, so we didn't have any internal residential provision. So those children who met the criteria, perhaps because of their own experiences and needs, we couldn't provide foster placements there in residential, and we had nowhere to place them before. So sometimes they're in accommodation because they've got special additional needs, physical disabilities or learning disabilities, or their behaviours are ones that we can't meet. And obviously we couldn't provide that previously because we haven't had that provision, residential provision. And with foster placements, we just don't have enough foster carers to be able to place those children. So we always look internally first to see what we have. We look for not-for-profit, but ultimately it's about where those children needs are going to be best met.
Right, thank you very much. Next question, page 7, 3.1 to 3.20. There's a long list of issues and risks to be considered while bringing this policy in. Can this transition be fully in place for April 27? And if not, can anything be done to change the timescales?
I spoke to Welsh Government, and one of their questions, because they've been around to all the 22 local authorities, or they're going around to speak to the heads of service, and I've been very clear that we in Merthyr Tydfil will not be able to meet this in all aspects as they would want us to. The reason being, we don't have enough foster carers. The likelihood of us recruiting foster carers to be able to transition these young people back by 2027 is really unrealistic. It's not right for some of those young people either. So if they've been with foster carers for 10, 12 years, I wouldn't want to bring those young people back. It's not in their best interest. It's unfair on them. They're settled. That's with their family community. So our ability to do that, even if I had enough foster carers, I'd have to look at those as an individual child and decide whether that meets their needs or not. There's been discussions about it may be that local authorities will have, as long as we don't place in new ones, whether there wouldn't be an expectation for us to bring those young people back who've been in placements. But again, until the bill goes through and we have the guidance, we're not very clear on that at the moment. But ultimately, we're in a really challenging position. Hopefully, residential young people, with the development of the flowers, we will be in a much better position. My concerns will be those young people perhaps that have physical disabilities, because we haven't got placements for those. And it's the hope then that we can do something regionally, or whether there'll be not-for-profits who will step in. There's also been conversations with the Welsh Government, have been thinking about whether they make some compromise or discussions about certain young people, perhaps, or certain needs that will be removed from the for-profit elimination of profit, but then they're concerned about that watering down. So again, it's really hard to say. I'm sorry.
Thank you. If we cannot access provision outside Wales, what difficulties would this cause?
So for certain young people, I mean, if there was enough provision within Wales that was suitable and met the needs of our young people, it wouldn't be an issue. But at this moment in time, there are more children seeking placements than perhaps there are placements available that's suitable and meeting those young people's needs. So it will cause us a challenge at the moment in time unless we have enough provision, which is why it's so important for us to develop our own, to have enough foster carers for our own. Sometimes it's important for young people to be out of Merthyr Tydfil because of a variety of reasons. That might be too risky for them to be within Merthyr Tydfil. So then it's about working with other local authorities perhaps to share provision. So ultimately, we wouldn't want children to be placed in England, but we're having to do it because there's no alternatives for them that are suitable and meet their needs.
Right, thank you. What does not-for-profit mean? Is it gross profit, net profit, or a service charge, or any other definition?
That wasn't clarified for us as at the moment in time. I'm hoping that when the bill comes out and it all through the guidance, it makes it really clear, because that has been asked by some of the for-profit providers at the moment, who are saying they're saying that they're not clear on what for-profit is. So I'm still waiting for that to be really clarified, I'm afraid.
Right, thank you. Now, the authority uses private providers for loads and loads of services. Why is it okay for this policy to apply for children's services, but not for the elderly or any of the other services?
That's a Welsh Government bill and policy, I'm afraid, so I can't, answer for why they've decided to work on that or not. Lisa might have something.
I think it's more about, over the years, the profit that's been made in the children's market, because it's been so difficult to place children in placements, especially, if you've got a child with complex needs and you basically go for the available placement, and they can charge any cost they want to. In adult services, it's more regulated. You have lots of there's more legislation in that area, where there are certain up to costs that it goes to. So if it's nursing care, is within a certain bracket. If it's residential care, is in a certain bracket. So it's not really costed out of the market like children's services is. So I think this is Welsh Government's plan to sort of bring it back in line with adult services. So we have somebody who comes in and is commissioned to look at adult services fees. Well, it's not the same in children's services, because a cost of a placement could increase because a child needs 4-to-1 staffing rather than 1-to-1. So the cost can change overnight depending on the needs of that child, whereas for adults it is completely different.
Right, thank you. And the last one, does profit or not for profit impinge on the standard of care provided? Does it make any difference to the standard of care provided, or would it?
In my view, the standard of care varies from home to home, from manager to manager and staffing team, and is not about who makes a profit or who doesn't make a profit. It is about those individual homes meeting the needs of those individual children, in my personal view, and from my experience.
Right. Thank you very much, both. That's all, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Claire Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not gonna ask many questions, obviously, but I will say, with the CIW, what are they looking at to do with the houses that are already, the homes that are already regulated by CIW? Are they expecting them to be retracted, or are they going to keep homes that are CIW registered there?
So Welsh Government expect them to transfer to not-for-profit. That's what they expect them to do. Okay. I think alternatively, that's why the bill is going through the second reading and to look at, because I think those are questions that really need to be answered. What is going to happen to these young people? There's some thoughts from Welsh Government, I believe, that says that local authorities perhaps can buy up these homes and just take on the provision or take on those foster carers if the agent, if they want to be sold to us. That there's lots of different expectations, but it's very clear that we, at the moment, by 2027, they shouldn't be in not-for-profits. The expectation is they transfer, I suppose.
So I've got another question, Chair. So with recruitment, I mean, let's be honest now, right? If you've got, you were saying you've got 18 children that you want to bring back into residential, realistically you need 50 staff members. That is what you're looking at in a day-to-day. A 4-bedded, if they're multi-staffed, is going to take 11 staff members. So how are you going with recruitment? Because at the end of the day, this is anyone who works within children's residential, as you know yourself, Joe. I think
people who work there are a rare breed. And they are, and you deal with situations that you don't even think about. And a lot of people go into residential thinking that it's this wonderful Tracy Beaker event, and you know, we're going to go on these activities and everything's going to be hunky-dory, when realistically it may not be that. So I was just wondering, you know, how are you coping with the recruitment side of things, and with the training? You know, are they going to all be trauma-informed trained, and what provider have you got for them to have team teach or whichever restraint technique they've got? So
yeah, in terms of recruitment, it's really important for me that we do it in a phased manner and open home by home, rather than open them all and just be for staff by agency. That doesn't work for me. It's about doing it correctly. So we've got one that's staffed, our second home. We've recruited, I think we're short a couple of night staff, but we've got agency staff and the same agency staff coming in for that. So we're doing it in a planned, measured way. So positively, we're doing quite well in terms of the residential staff at the moment, better than I thought we would. So I'm really pleased about how we're doing it, and we're getting the right staff in. In terms of training, obviously we have the regional training, and we do team teach, and it all goes through our regional training team in providing that. We've also got the behaviour clinic, who have done a lot of training for our residential staff in terms of tribe model, and providing that. So yeah, our staff go through that. They're going through the AWIF and the QCF to make sure, you know, we're putting them all through that, and our managers through the QCF level 5. So it's all progressing as we're going it, but it's all very new for us. But fortunately, our regional workforce team, RCT, had a number of homes, so we're just, you know, we're quite lucky really that they already had those systems in place that we can just utilise.
yeah, well, we'll say Philly took one of our managers, so you know, there is headhunting going on. Sorry, Chair, can I ask another question, please? I recently attended the Foster Merthyr event. Well, it was just the open day and the question and answer day in the hub. I was quite shocked how very little people attended, you know, and I said to them, what can we do? What can we do to get the message across that we need foster families? And I was quite shocked, because in my ignorance, I didn't think about how much a person gets paid. And when they said how much a family within the local authority gets paid, and I assumed that, I didn't even think there was such thing as private foster families, and I feel really ignorant saying that. And when I found out how much they got paid, I was just like, oh my word, you know. And I was just wondering, is the incentive is not there because of the little payment? And it's not, and to me, it must probably, it is a lot, you know. But when you've got foster families having that astronomical amount, I just wondered what we can do, because they need to be attended, you know. I don't mind going, if they've ever got days, I don't mind going and sitting with them as well. And because I just think, if this is the way forward for us, needing the foster placements, then surely we should be assisting as well to enable our children, because at the end of the day, what we're looking for are the needs of our children in Merthyr, and that's what we should care about. So, you know, I mean, if there's anything you think I can do, but, you know, yeah.
Thank you. In terms of payments, there's a piece of work being done for Foster Wales across nationally to look at whether we can, like the real living wage type thing, and they're looking at that for fostering payments. So we'll have it the same across all 22 local authorities. That's a massive piece of work, and as you can imagine, everyone pays slightly differently. If we have to raise ours by, you know, X amount, where's that money coming from? So those questions have gone back to Welsh Government and say, well, if you want us to pay, you know, I'd love to be able to pay them far more money, but it's that balance, isn't it, of what we can afford. And what I will say is, what the foster carers get and what the agency get are very different amounts. So sometimes there's not a great deal of difference in what the actual carers receive. It's the agency that are taking far more of the money. To be aware of that. And there's other things, isn't it? It's about, you know, you're going to have the social worker for the child and your fostering social worker based in the same building. You can have those conversations. you don't have to go to X, Y, and Z to get that support. You can just come to us and we can provide it. So there's lots of positive and negatives. I suppose for foster carers thinking about it for both ways. I think we have a lot of support in Merthyr Tydfil compared to most local authorities and private providers. So that they might be saying they provide therapeutic support, but actually what do they do? Whereas here we've got a therapeutic social worker who's providing that support, who can do mediation, who can go and do CBT and have those conversations. So yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes like carers will say to me, "Oh, it's not about the money." But it could be, in terms of council tax reductions that we provide and those sort of things that help you in other ways that don't have an impact on tax. So there's that. Yeah, it is a challenge though. You're right, and that's why I always go on about foster care recruitment, because it's so important for us in Merthyr Tydfil. Our numbers are so small. We really, really need more foster carers.
Yeah, Joe, I sat there and not one person came in and just said, "Oh, can I have a freebie?" There was nothing at all, and I felt as if I wanted to go outside with a loudspeaker and say, roll up, come in," because please come and listen. Yeah. So if there is any way, like I said, I did mention them seeing if they could contact Cwmtaf. They've got the rolling television boards in doctor surgeries and things like that. I advise them if you could possibly look at whether you can have something on a rolling board in a hospital, because it is so important, and I think you've just got a hard task. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor George. Any more questions? Okay. Councillor Isaac, please.
Yeah, thanks. One of my big points was just picked up on foster carers' rate of pay. I've found that in the past, nobody wants to take it on because carers or foster carers often are out the pocket due to taking on a child. Secondly, in today's day and age, a lot of foster carers are very concerned that they'll be sailing close to the wind on, shall we say, the woke aspect of things nowadays, and that they would be in prosecution or being prosecuted by the elder children for not taking on the wishes of identifying as, I don't know, they can identify as anything. But there's a lot of people now afraid to take on people because they're afraid of prosecution for not taking on their wishes as being identified as whatever. And so they feel that if they're going to take on these roles, they ought to be paid for the challenge. And that's one of the biggest things. Speaking about
We're on questions now, like Councillor Isaac.
Yeah. So what are we going to do to try and support these foster carers in that mindset that they've got? That is basically the question.
Okay, so we have consultation events probably every 6 months with our foster carers. We had one a fortnight ago. To be honest, that's not come up. We've consulted with foster carers before about finances, and actually because they have to register as self-employed and look into some of the taxing, finances hasn't been a major issue for them, because it's been supporting them in other ways has been what they want. So in terms of like the council tax rebate, that's more helpful for them as carers. We provide things like all the furniture that they need for those young people. So there's lots of other things that go around, if that makes sense, that provide that support around, so they wouldn't have to buy the beds and those sort of things in their money that they get given to them. And I'll be honest, no one's mentioned anything about any identity issues as coming forward as an issue, or any concerns or worries about it. If there are, then we have got some guidance that we're developing at the moment in time to say how we work as a local authority, what is the legalities behind it. It's not gone through anything yet because it's just an internal guidance document that we're looking to do, but it's certainly not been raised. And again, like I said, the consultation was a fortnight ago, so we've not come across that as issues. But they have the support workers that they can go to. They have the fostering network that provide a lot of guidance and support for carers if they wish to do that in terms of any issues that come about. But again, I've not heard of it. So
no, I've just scuttlebutt basically. I've received that. I haven't had any definite proof of it happening, but I've had feedback such as that. I'll go on to another question then. How many residential homes do the authority own?
So at the moment, we've got one registered and one being registered, so we've got the two.
You two. So are we looking at any more?
Yeah, so with the flowers developing, we're in the process of developing those at the moment. So that will be 2 4-bed homes, a 2-bed, I'm going to use the term emergency, the Welsh Government call it safer care, but we'll, for those young people perhaps that we get told about late in the night or the placements are broken down, and then we're going to have our short breaks, 2-bed short breaks, which is basically 1 night, 2 nights for families with children with disabilities to prevent placement breakdown.
Yeah, you may see where I'm going to next on this. Well, how are we going to find these properties? Because obviously you know as well as anybody else. You tell any residents that we're going to have a home or any placement in their vicinity, there's going to be a lot of public backlash. I know you've done it properly in the past, but are Merthyr Council going to actually own the home, or are we going to pass it on to a company who owns the property, a different property?
So the ones we've got is Thomastown House, which is our local authority building already, and we haven't got plans for any other children's homes developments. We haven't got the need for them within Merthyr Tydfil, so there's no other. I can never promise because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 12, 18 months with children coming in. But we've certainly got no plans for any other children's homes developments.
Okay.
For that to be coming up as an issue at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's okay. That's done. It's done. It was more along the payments and, as I said, the what I've heard about the what's it? How do you call it? The walk aspect, shall we say?
Can I just add that obviously this is learning for us because obviously we haven't had residentials in the past. So from the first one we opened, we learned lessons from that, and then obviously did things differently around consultation for the second, and obviously for the flowers we've done things differently again. So we're always improving. We're on our improvement journey. So obviously we're open to, we're not ignoring the public. We've had consultation events and they've been spoken to. Councillors within their wards have been spoken to. So, we are doing things differently so that we're engaging with, various stakeholders to make sure that we get this right. So it's not something we're doing in secret and behind closed doors. We are engaging with people.
Cabinet member?
Thanks, Chair. If I may, I just wanted to just raise terminology used in the chamber, if that's okay. I think we need to be careful with the word woke because the origin of that word is somebody who was educated on social injustices, but that term has been weaponised by the far right and caused culture wars. So I just think that's something we need to be mindful of. And if being woke is being aware of social injustices, I think that all our foster carers need to be aware of that. So if that's okay, Chair, I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification, Councillor Maynard, folks. A lot of the questions I had intended to raise have been asked already, but I have still got some outstanding. The first one was regarding the guidance which is proposed. Obviously, I'm assuming there is no indication when that is going to be received in view of the fact that the legislation is still going through. So am I correct in saying there isn't anything forthcoming? If we can go to paragraph 311, I think it was. I've had a question. Bear with me a second. No, that's been covered. No problem at all. Paragraph 317, the negative impact on the Welsh language. Sounds very concerning. Can you explain what that sentence is about, though? Because I thought the intention was to bring back more locally than to provide accommodation far away from the young person's home area.
Yeah, you're correct. That's the hope, I suppose, of doing this. I suppose the concern is if we lose providers in Wales and we don't have enough placements, despite it saying that we can't place children in England, if there are no placements suitable for these young people, we're not going to have local authorities, we're not going to have a choice but to place children where there is suitable provision who meets their needs. So there's concern if we lose them in Wales, despite the legislation saying we can't, we're going to have to, because ultimately children are going to need beds to someone to live, aren't they? And ultimately that's going to be my greatest need, is to provide a bed for a young person that meets their needs. So there's concern then, if we lose it and we're having to place in England, it could impact on the Welsh language then, because they're losing their cultural identity.
So do you envisage that if there isn't the provision in Wales, that the placement would be in a company that makes profit in England?
That is a great concern for local authorities, yeah.
And that hasn't been clarified, is it?
So it's not supposed to happen within the bill.
Yes.
When we're not allowed as a local authority to place in England, but ultimately, like I say,
yes,
we may need to.
Yeah, and it could be on a profit basis, though.
Yes.
To the company that provides it.
Yeah. Unless England go down the route as well.
Yes.
Which could happen.
And my final question is regarding the grant which has been received. Roughly how much has been received to date?
I'd have to get back to you.
Yeah,
I can't off the top of my head.
Well, we're a small committee, so an email to all members, I think, would be sufficient. So that was the final my final question in relation to that. Are we any comments now on what has been said here today? I want to come back on something at the end, but leave members give their comments if they would. Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much. I just want to say I don't envy your job at all. You know, I think when you're reading that, you've got a task, and I do worry. You know, I do think that, to me, you know, I work in children's residential, so I work in the private sector. Yes, it does affect me, but it doesn't affect me because I know I can get a job. You know, that I can go to any authority and I can apply for a position and I can interview, and hopefully I could get that senior position that I am currently. So I think job-wise, you've written that, Joe. I have to say it's impeccable. You know, you've gone really into detail on it, and I can hear your struggle when I'm reading it, you know, and listening to you today, and I'm thinking, oh, I really feel for you, because it is hard and you've done such a good job, and I think you are doing a good job. And you know, if there is anything, I think we may have to look at headhunting. You know, that may be the way going, I don't know. But I just think, I don't envy you, but your report is impeccable. So thank you ever so much for bringing that and drawing it to the attention, because I just think it's really important for everyone to be able to hear what our young people, because this is what we're looking at, what our young people are potentially having to go through. So thank you ever so much, and thank you, Chair.
Any other comments?
Chair, can I go?
So I just wanted to say a thank you to Jo as well on the back of that, because it's to her credit that, you know, we've done a successful sort of 12 months really with residential. I mean, it was very sort of, you know, early stages, and Jo has just brought it in and sort of, you know, taken off with it. So I think it's a big thank you to Jo for the work she's done on it.
I'm sure the committee would like to echo those sentiments. Those who have been on the committee, we appreciate what work has been done in the last 12 months. I'm going to use my chairman in a second and ask another question, which I forgot to ask. It's in relation to, are there many not-for-profit companies already in existence in the market?
So many of them are sort of charities in terms of the residentials. So there are a couple. I won't name them. I was going to name them, I probably shouldn't. But there's not many in the residential. So the hope is obviously that for-profit providers will transfer for that. With fostering, there are a few more agencies, but they're quite small. And I think our anxiety that we have is they might find it too difficult to continue to expand, and they may be bought up by some of the larger for-profit providers who are based head offices in England, may have foster carers in Wales. could potentially be a loophole.
Right. Would members agree this is obviously a very fluid situation, really, with regard to the legislation, that we perhaps have regular updates on this? Not massive long reports, but just to give us an update how things are progressing with regards to the legislation, and also how the Social Services Department are reacting to what is coming forward. Would members agree to that? Yeah. We have a meeting about the forward work programme next week, so we can raise it and discuss it, perhaps what we need in that. Okay? Well, thank you very much. Very comprehensive report. We move on to our other report this evening, and that's in relation to the basic income pilot. Louise, if you'd like to bring us in on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the summary of the report is so Scrutiny members requested an update and information on the basic income pilot first evaluation report. So this report provides an update to Scrutiny members on the basic income pilot evaluation. The annual report 23-24 is available via the background papers link. Case studies have been completed to indicate the different impact this pilot has had on Merthyr Tydfil's young people. And the purpose of this report in 2.1 is for the content of the report to be discussed and noted.
And again, it's over to you, Joanne.
Sorry, my voice is going now. So I won't speak much on this one. I hope everyone's read the report. I'll be honest with this, the basic income pilot has come from Welsh Government information. So it is just literally all in the report. So I'll try not to say too much. So obviously it was launched in July 22. Some young people have had payments as part of that. This is the main part for me is probably the young people and the case studies. So perhaps if I focus on that rather than going through, if everyone's okay with that. Ultimately, from our experiences, some young people have really, really done well using this basic income pilot, and some young people perhaps who are more vulnerable have perhaps ended up with more exploited and more vulnerable because they've had additional monies going around, and that's ultimately how it's been. So some young people it's been really good for, and some young people it hasn't been so good for, and it's really hard, isn't it, to identify perhaps some of these young people that have done so unwell with it in terms of, they've had great deals of money, they've around people who perhaps take advantage or exploit them, and it's been really hard for us with this basic income pilot to be able to manage that better for them, to help them to manage that and not spend the money. Yet we've had one young person who has taken that, gone on holiday, realised it's a different way of living and has flown with it and has gone out and got a job and training and has really changed their life journey. So it's really hard to evaluate this because you've just got those extremes. Some young people it's just flown, and other young people have been really more challenging for it. I think some of the staff, within the 16+ team had that anxiety about some of these more vulnerable young people and could identify them, who those ones were, and would, if this comes in, would like to be able to provide a different level of support, so help them to manage it differently rather than give them lots of money. And but for others, it's been wonderful. So it's really hard to give a definite on whether it's been a success or not. But I suppose that's for Welsh Government to continue that evaluation, to look into it more lengthy review on it. There's lots of different, professionals say some of them, like I say, are positive, and some of them see the risks, depending on which young people they work with. So, I'm really sorry, I'm losing my voice now.
Thank you, Joe. In many respects, what you've said is, as society behaves anyway, really. Those who deal with things in one way and those who deal with things in another way. Any questions, please, of Joe on this? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones first.
Oh, sorry. I'm a bit deaf at the moment.
It's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Sorry, Chair. My question was, how many in Merthyr have been part of this pilot scheme? Yeah, because we're in like it would have been like 3 years ago. So yes, I was just out of curiosity how many had been involved in it. Yeah. Yeah, because I think, I don't know whether, do you want me to make, because I've got a comment, do you want me to do my comment? Yeah, 'cause all I was going to say was, I mean, thank you ever so much, Chair. You know, if we've got two people who are on there and you've got some feedback from them, if, you know, if you have any feedback, if we could possibly have that as well, because that is quite interesting. So that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
We did have, initially when the report was written, there were 2 case studies in there, but because we felt that potentially the young people would be identified, we didn't think it was appropriate to go in the public arena, but we can certainly share details with you. What I will say is after the reports were published, the media did pick up on it, so they've asked if they could interview a young person on it, so they're liaising with the care leaving team now to have that discussion as to whether the young person would be willing to tell their story. So
Thank you, Chair.
Just going to make a comment, Councillor Thomas, before I call you in, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Lisa, for that, because that was one of my questions, really, and I thought that may have been the case. It would have been nice to have a detailed case study to look at then, but obviously, if young people were going to be identified, I can understand the reasons for it. Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. Joanne, there's just one thing. It seems to me that this scheme has been brought in is a substantial amount of money that's being paid here. It's the equivalent. If somebody had a job to earn this amount, they'd have to be earning about £19,000 a year. Now, unless I've got it wrong, this grant is coming with no strings attached and very loose monitoring, because the monitoring that's been done indicates about 4 different things that people are spending their money on. Holidays abroad, which you've already outlined, socializing, unless there are commitments on the young people in order to receive this grant, and strong monitoring of what the money is being spent on, how are you ever going to know if this scheme has been a success?
I suppose that's what Welsh Government's pilot review and their evaluation is trying to see. I can't answer for that because it's a Welsh Government scheme and pilot, and they set it up. There was some consultation which I was involved with. I wasn't in Merthyr when it was set up at the time when those concerns were raised, but they wanted to pilot it to see whether, like you say, whether they needed to have criteria or actually whether it would work. Having it loose, and then, like I said, for some young people it did, and for some young people it hasn't been that successful. But I suppose that's what they wanted. My understanding was that's what they wanted to see from it, whether they could do something that was more general. But that's the learning, isn't it? Perhaps that will come out of the evaluation, is they may need to have looked at it differently. We shall see what the final evaluation says.
Thank you, Joanne. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of questions myself. Has the pilot ended now? It's still on. It has totally ended, is it?
So the financial aspect has, but they're doing the longitudinal study to see if that has had an impact on those young people.
Thank you. I thought it had. I thought it had, wasn't 100%. At the end of the payments were made. Was there that cliff edge then, or that their income would substantially drop at the end of the period that the young people were having the income?
I think it was. I think that was what it was. Sorry, this wasn't my thing. In my previous role. My understanding was that was one of the concerns raised, was they were having money, then it stopped.
Yeah. Because my understanding, it was trialled as a pilot for care leavers, but countries in other parts of the world have a basic income, but it continues for all the I think Finland may have got it, or one of the Scandinavian countries, but it was to carry on and not end with a cliff edge. This is why I found quite surprising, really, that they have it for so many couple of years, and then it ends and they down then to a level of income which is substantially less than what they were having for the period.
I think that part of it was that any young person who was having the allowance, as part of that, would have training, and then they would go on to be employed, and then obviously they'd go on to have a wage, so they wouldn't see that drop off. But I think, you know, we've had some success stories, you know, admittedly, but then there were some that didn't go on to get employment. So yeah.
I have no further questions. Any comments from members before? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, the comment I've got, obviously, I am aware of children who have been on the scheme, and when the scheme first started, Councillor Thomas, what they did was, we were told when the young people were going on the scheme that they weren't allowed to claim any benefits. That was the one thing. There was no benefits to be paid. This was their income. They were allowed to look for jobs, and that didn't penalise them with having that money. So it was like encouraging them to continue. There was a lot of things that were being paid out of there, you know, and I think a lot of the young people with the accommodation, the concern was cuckooing, which that can be a concern for anybody, any one of us as well. So the feedback I had, because I have spoken to somebody, and they are now employed. You know, they're not from Merthyr, but they were part of the scheme. It has ended, and they are employed. And I think it's hit and miss, because in society nowadays, the way we are is taught. So if you come from a family who they don't work, sometimes it's a taught behaviour, and I think when we've got young people who are in the care system, it's how we teach them as well, and how we can say, you know, let's look for that Saturday job, let's show you how to do this. And I'd like to see the scheme carried on, because I think, in my opinion, I think there was a lot more positives potentially than there were negatives. So it'd be interesting to see how it was. So I think, you know, I know Joey wasn't part of it, but well done for Merthyr taking part of it, and I do hope the children succeeded. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that insight, Councillor Jones. It's nice to hear that.
That's good.
Thank you, Joanne.
18. Sorry.
18, yeah. It's gone up.
16, then they went 18, sorry. The numbers increased.
I think then, as report members, obviously there's no recommendation in it, so have a good evening. Yeah, I hope you all I hope you're feeling better, Joanne. And I hope you won't be staying up all night watching America.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all. If we move on then to item number 5 it is, the draft forward work programme. Members got any questions, comments?
Can I just remind members?
Oh, yeah, can I just, sorry, something been pointed out to me a second, Councillor Isaac, will be a second now. There was a report removed from the agenda for this meeting because there's an Eston report being carried out. I've spoken with Chris Hall, who was the author, and asked if he could bring it back as soon as possible, because there were a lot of, I don't know if members saw the draft report, when it came out originally via Jane. It wasn't on the agenda, but there were a lot of questions, etc., to be asked of in that report. With this, what has been taking place this week, it may fill some of the gaps that were in the report. So I'm not certain whether it'll come to our next meeting, but I've asked for it to come as soon as possible. That's okay. Also, then we have a joint workshop with Learning on the 19th of November regarding toileting. I think that's been outstanding some time, I think, to be held. and is going ahead on the 19th.
And health will be attending as well.
Or health are attending as well as education colleagues, is it? And a safe garden workshop is planned prior to scrutiny in March next year. Okay. Our quarterly technical meeting, which myself and Claire as vice chair, is being held next Tuesday. Tuesday, that's right, yeah. So if members got anything that they wish us to raise in that meeting to feed into the forward work programme, I hope members agreed with my suggestion that we have an update on this not-for-profit, because there are a lot of unanswered questions still that offers no fairness to them, couldn't give answers to because they're still awaiting the information. So that's one matter that I think will be put on the programme going forward. Is there anything else that members specifically want to bring forward?
The forward work program it is. It's just pre-notice that if there's much to do with the adoption aspect to it, I'm going to have to declare an interest into that, because I sit as an independent member on the Vale and Valleys adoption panel.
Right.
Okay.
There is an adoption report coming up in the next meeting, so we'll have to see what it could well be that what's in that report wouldn't affect. You may have to declare an interest, but not leave the meeting. So let's see what's in it, okay? But we'll make a note of that. Yeah.
To me, this gives me an opportunity to speak. I wouldn't say any of this in council, because this is, we're not debating. We can speak about this, and I can give an opinion, but I would never hold a debate about it, and I would never vote, because it just so
I just thought it was worth the committee knowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's and bring your experience
And
both
that's-
through
and
to
that's
the
thing,
committee
it's
as well.
experience. It's what,
Anything you or Claire, have you both got questions? No, right. No, must have been a previous button press. Councillor Thomas, anything you specifically would like to see on?
No, I've got nothing to raise on there, Gareth. Thank you.
Okay. So obviously we'll update the forward work programme after we've met next week. Item 6, scrutiny referrals. There are no referrals have been received at this stage today. And then item 7, recommendations. Obviously there were no specific recommendations in the reports we've considered today, but I think both reports have had a fair and good airing of matters. And there's no need, I don't think, my colleague to have anything recorded, just to the members believe that they have had a fair hearing of matters that were considered today.
Yes.
sorry, I put my mic on because I would just like to say, Councillor Thomas, you know, I think your questions were so poignant to the paper, and they were questions that I would love to have asked, and I knew the paper was in safe hands with you because we'd already discussed it. So thank you ever so much for
Claire.
questions you made. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. Feedback on scrutiny activities. Well, we've already mentioned the planned workshops, the one on toileting, but there's also will be one on budgeting. The budget, sorry, that will be prior to our scrutiny in January. Okay. Any other business? I've had no notification of any other business, so the meeting is now formally closed. And thank you all for your very invaluable contribution today and making my job quite easy. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everybody.
Noswaith dda.